Hello there, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm taking the Road to Christmas Stampin' Up! Card kit and transforming it into a 2-page Christmas scrapbook layout with a rustic vintage truck vibe. Now, if you've never done our kits from our kits collection, they are self-contained, all-inclusive projects. So you get the little brown box in the mail, or you order the little brown box, and it has everything inside that you need to be able to complete the project shown. So this particular project is an 8-card kit. All of the things that you need to create those 8 cards are inside, even adhesive. So you have some foam dimensionals, you have some tear tape. Of course, you can use your own tape runner, but in many of the kits, there's even some small adhesive dots. It just kind of depends on the kit. If it's a kit that requires a stamp, there's typically a spot or a stamp spot, a small ink pad, and a disposable block or a block that you can use for travel, and then a stamp set. This particular kit does not require any stamping. It creates 8 cards, 2 versions. So all of the parts and pieces you can punch out. It comes with pre-printed envelopes. They're so cute. They have a gingham interior. It has some base cards that have a little bit of a forest scene or a tree grove scene or even Christmas tree. And you can place those on the fronts of the cards, and there's really cute gingham blue card bases. There's a darker gingham blue and a lighter gingham blue. We have 2 tones of the vintage truck. So we have a set of red, real red, and a set of cherry cobbler. We have some loose tree punch outs, a puppy dog with a blue bandana, some presents or gifts, and then the pre-printed sentiments. Now, these sentiments come in all different languages because, of course, Stampin' Up! Is a global company, but I've just pulled out the English version. So these are the 2 cards that it creates, 4 of each, and I've created those exactly as designed in the kit. And I wanted to start this video out by showing you some teeny tiny elevations and things that you could do to these cards. I love them just the way they are, but there are small things that you could do to elevate them if you choose. And then we're going to take the leftovers from that and we're going to create a 2-page scrapbook layout that's going to be so fun. So one of the most basic elevations is adding bling. So most of the kits from the kits collection don't necessarily have bling in them. It just depends on the kits and how many parts and pieces. So I'm just kind of shopping through some different bling that I think would work. We have some plain gold floral sequins. We have some that have some bright Christmassy vibes. We actually have some rustic textured dots that I like to use. These are the deer dots. So there's some pool party in there. There's some red in there. You could go with plain rhinestones. Last year we got these peppermints, although this isn't quite the card kit for peppermints, but just kind of shopping through some of those. So part of me feels like it should be Christmassy colors, and part of me feels like rustic textured dots would look really cute on this. So I think I'm going to start with the textured dots, and we'll just add a few little dots to elevate the card. There's other things that you can do to elevate the card that are really quick and easy, and one of those is adding a mat. So you can see that the tree grove or the Christmas tree lineup there behind the truck card, I think it's about 3.5 by 4 3/4. So we could actually cut a piece of cardstock that's an 1/8 inch bigger than that and put that behind that base piece to just help it pop a little bit. Adding extra photo mats to scrapbook layouts really elevates a page, and it's no different on a card. When you add a pop of color behind another piece that helps that piece to stand out a little bit better, it really makes a difference. Now, on the real red truck. I should have probably cut real red. I actually cut a cherry cobbler here as my example, but you get the gist. We're just actually adding a pop of color behind a piece. You can even do that with cutout pieces if you want to lay those cutout pieces over cardstock and trim around them. Now the truck is kind of unique in that it has a little slot in it that's already pre-cut that allows you to tuck the presents and the tree into the truck to make it look like it's actually sitting in the truck bed. So I love the way this truck seems like it's coming off of the card. It seems 3D. And then by being able to tuck those pieces inside the truck where that little slit is, it makes it look even more realistic, and it's super cute. So I've added just one little piece of foam dimensional to the dog here, and I'll put him in the front, and I love it. And then we can go ahead and bling this one up as well. We could probably try something different if we wanted to try some of the other embellishments, but it's so quick and easy. And this is really designed for people who don't have a lot of time, that want to be crafty and creative, and they can pull these out of the box, punch out all the pieces, and assemble according to the photos and the instructions, and literally be done in, say, 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. I really think it's even faster than that for this particular kit. Some of the kits take a little longer because they do have stamping. So I went ahead and I used some of the traditional sparkling sequins. They're kind of a little bit like glitter paper. So I added those, and I do like those. It's a little more of a rustic card, so maybe the sparklies aren't the best, but let's go ahead and do that same technique on this next card. And we're going to add another quick and easy technique. Now on the original card, there's foam tape popping up the truck. And so that means a little bit of extra postage, but I'm going to show you a little trick of how you can get this truck to lay flat. And it's actually a trick that my upline, Naomi Smith, the leader of the Connected Hearts team, an amazing leader, showed me. She's just a guru card maker, and she showed me how to do this. Her dimensions are different than mine for the project that she showed me, but the concept is the same. So I have a piece of Cherry Cobbler cardstock that is 2x3, and I've scored it at 1/4, 3/8, 1 1/8, 1 1/2, and it's a 2x3 if I didn't say that. So 1/8, 3/8, 1 1/8, and 1 1/2. And we're going to fold over both ends so that they overlap with each other. And then we're going to pop that open and reveal a little bit of a tube. It's like a rectangular tube. And then I'm going to put adhesive on the top of that and strategically place that on the truck so that now I will be able to push that truck flush if I want to put it in the envelope, but then I'll be able to pop that up. And the dimension that you get from this little piece that I created is actually even higher than what you would get from foam dimensionals. So if somebody sits that on their desk, it's actually going to stick out quite a ways and be super cute. So they can open that up, they can sit that on their desk, and it pops out. But to mail it, it will bend down flush. And it's such a neat technique that Naomi taught me. She's an amazing leader. So of course, I would always love you to be on my Snapshots team. But if you're looking for an amazing leader, she would be one that you could seek out as well. I've been with Naomi for almost a decade now, and she's just incredible, an incredible teacher. All right, so now I'm going to put the rest of the pieces in place. I put the sentiment piece flush because I didn't want to pop that up after we went to the work of making the truck so that it would lay flat. I'm going to put the gifts inside the truck, and then we'll be able to push that flat. Let me straighten out this little sentiment piece. And there you have some quick and easy elevations. Simply add bling, add an extra mat behind pieces to make them pop. Maybe make something a little more elevated by making it a pop out. So that's a few little simple elevations that you can do with an existing card kit that make it super fun. Now let's take those leftovers and let's see what we can create for a scrapbook layout. I'm really excited about this one. I love the rustic vibe. I believe we have 4 card bases left. We have 4 envelopes left if we need to use those. And I'm going to make a patchworky feel in this scrapbooking layout. I'm going to use a layout that I've used before in the past. So I want to document our home for the holidays. And so I have a picture of the Christmas tree and the stockings, and that's all I actually have. So I really only needed a single page layout for these 2 photos, but because most people really enjoy 2-page layouts, I'm going to go ahead right now and I'm going to make a companion page, but I don't really need it. But I can also just add some more pictures of our home and our decorations from Christmas from this year and complete my 2-page layout if I decide to do that, or I can just leave it a single page layout for myself. So I'm going to take the card bases, a couple of them, because I'm not exactly sure how many I'm going to need at this point. So I'm going to take 2, one light and one dark, and I'm going to cut 3-inch squares, and then I'm also going to cut 2 by 3-inch rectangles. So you can, out of one card base, you can get 2 and 2. I believe, let's see, it's 2 and 2. Is that right? Yeah, 2 and 2. And then we're going to add some cherry cobbler. So we've got light blue 2 and 2. We've got dark blue 2 and 2. And then we're going to get some of those same sizes, 3 by 3 and 2 by 3 in cherry cobbler. I do end up knowing that I need 9 3 by 3 squares all together. And I need 6 2 by 3 rectangles all together, and I want them to alternate. So that ends up being my final answer in terms of the numbers that I need. Now I'm going to pull out an embossing folder to emboss the cherry cobbler, and I've actually been in love with this new one. It's called Beautiful Pattern Embossing Folder. I'm not sure if you can see all that detail, but it reminds me a little bit of a quilting pattern. It has like a diamond dot pattern. So now I have some small strips here left over, and we're actually going to make a quilting pattern around a white piece. So I've cut 1/2 by 3-inch strips in those same 2 card bases, and then I've done that as well in the embossed cherry cobbler, and we're going to alternate. So we need 16 of these pieces total, and we're going to be using double the amount of the cherry cobbler because we're going to be using dark blue cherry cobbler, light blue cherry cobbler, dark blue cherry cobbler all the way around. So I'm actually going to put adhesive all the way around my sheet. Now these 2 sheets are actually not even white willow sheets, the background cardstocks. They're actually the throwaway pieces that come in our papers that have like a little cardboardy feel. If you don't like the thickness, you don't have to use them. But sometimes when the base doesn't show at all, I will just use those throwaway pieces. Now, I got all the way through these and I was like, oh, this is a rustic scrapbook layout. I really wanted to dirty the edges. Now, some people don't like blurry, dirty edges. They like it to be super neat. So you can hold your blending tool real flat and run it gently along the side, and it's just enough inking to make it look dark. Or I've seen some people actually pull them across the ink pad on the edge or tap them on the ink pad on the edge. I actually like them to look more rustic and blurred and have a little bit heavier ink on them. So if you don't like that look, definitely go lighter. But I ended up putting the ink on all of the pieces on the right, and then I went back off camera and I pulled off all the pieces on the left, and I really love the way that looks. Now we're going to cover the circle, which is the negative piece from the cricket circle that I created. So what I did for this cricket circle is I actually put two circles together and made one into pen and one into cut, and that's how I created it on the cricket. But I'll link in the description of the YouTube video my design space file so that you have this cricket element that I used. And it's something that I've used in the past. I think the last time I used this circle maybe was for the Journey workshop, and I used this style of a patchwork layout. So I'm actually just going to put adhesive all over the circle that came out of the cricket circle. And I'm going to put 2 rows of the 3x3 and 1 row of the 2x3 rectangles over the whole circle. And then we're going to trim around that circle to create a really cute patchwork circle that we can put in the middle of the larger cricket circle. And then we're going to decorate around that. And it's going to give it this real rustic vibe. So the combination of the pool party and the cherry cobbler is something I love. Add the gingham in there, and it's just over the top, really, really cute. And then add the embossing on the cherry cobbler, and you have texture that you've added then. So I'm going to just cut around this circle, and then we're going to use that in the center. So it's just kind of random how it worked out, like some light squares, some dark squares in terms of the blue, and then all of the cherry cobbler is in there as well. And we'll carry that pattern over onto the right companion page. But looking at the patchwork around the outside and looking at the patchwork on the inside of the circle, it was like, oof, that's kind of a lot of patchwork. I love it so much. The color combination is one of my favorite color combinations of all times, but I think we need to ground it a little bit with some black. And because we have black accents in this kit, I think the black background is going to work really well. So the first thing that I do is I actually trim down that larger circle to 11 1/4 by 11 1/4. It was originally 11 1/2 by 11 1/2, and I make the black piece 11 1/2 by 11 1/2. The reason I do that is because by adding the black piece, if I went larger than the original 11 1/2 white willow, then I'm going to be covering up too much of that edge of that patchwork look. So by trimming it down a little, it won't hurt a bit, and then we'll have a little bit of a transition there. And on the left page, I'm actually adding foam dimensionals to pop that top piece up. Now, I should say, if you're going to use a stamped title, you should definitely stamp your title before you put your foam tape on. And there are lots of wonderful Christmas stamps, and I don't know if you know it or not, but you can curve the acrylic stamps around a block. So you can, figure out the curve of the circle that we have here, curve your acrylic stamp on the block, and actually stamp on the curve. I've done that a lot. I love doing that, but I do think I'm just actually going to use up, since we put the black in here, some of my black acrylic alphabet letters that are in my stash that I've been trying to use up for a long, long time. Now over on the right, the key on the right is just to repeat that pattern, but we're going to repeat that pattern outside of a circle, and then we'll add a little bit of a grounding strip with the basic black. So what I did on my photos, I have a 4x6 and a 4x4, and I added an 1/8" white willow around the edge, and then I actually went 1/4 of an inch up for the black, so that there was a little bit wider of a black element there. So then I just used my ruler to line up the 3 2x3" pieces on the right side. Once you get that first piece in place, you can pretty much just put the rest of the pieces flush. And then I'm going to add that transition black strip there, and we'll have the 2 bases done, and we'll be able to photo place and then do our embellishing. And it's going to be such easy embellishing because we're going to use the parts and pieces directly from the Road to Christmas kit. And it's going to be so cute. We're going to be able to use some of the envelope pieces pieces. We're going to be able to use some of the little background pieces, and of course the trees, the truck, the dog, and all of those little pieces are going to be so cute. And it's going to have such a country Christmas vibe. And Pool Party and red together are really pretty. It reminds me, there was an old Close to My Heart collection years and years ago called Snow Haven, I think. And it was like this Pool Party color, even though it wasn't called Pool Party, but it was Pool Party in red and black. And it had snowflakes and just pops of red throughout the whole thing. And I absolutely loved it. I love the fact that we can piece together pieces of the card kit and create a scrapbook layout. I'm just fussing here a little bit to figure out where I want the photos. I do think I need a journal spot. So even though I don't need the right companion page right now, I do have a story to tell about our decorations at home, the history behind our stockings, and just documenting the decorating of the tree and that kind of thing. And so I think I will go ahead and make a journal spot on the right and then plan to fill in the photos with this year's Christmas photos. So I trimmed down one of those base cards, and I trimmed it down to 3 by 4 and put that on willow white 1/8 inch photo mat. So all of those photos on the right, the 2 4x4s and the 2 3x4s, have an 1/8 inch willow white around the border, which is very standard. Now I've pulled out my huge stash of acrylic shapes. I'm kind of hoping that Stampin' Up! Will begin making acrylic shapes. They did purchase the Close to My Heart laser that used to make our acrylic shapes. And so it would be so fun if they did start to make acrylic shapes. I know it's a process to really get that down to a science, because even when Close to My Heart started, they had really, really thick shapes. And then they got thinner and thinner and more intricate as they learned it more. So basically, I took a Spotlight on Nature circle, crimped circle, and I cut out one of those card base cards, and I also cut out an envelope. And so I cut 2 circles out so that I could use those as landing spots. And then I've laid out my Home for Christmas. I don't have anything secure yet, but I laid out the Home for Christmas acrylic shapes, put a couple trees behind that I think will be really cute. I think we can just use the card kit and the cards from the card kit as the example for the building of the scenes. So we can build a couple truck scenes that are almost identical to the way that the cards look. So we can put the truck in the tree, the Christmas tree yard with the Christmas tree and the presents in the back. We can put the truck in the tree grove like it's heading toward the tree grove, and we can put the presents in the back. Now I grabbed a banner from the Stylish Shapes, which is just a good old, just like Spotlight on Nature, a good old investment set. I made a couple banners, one out of the backside of an envelope that has that little bit of a plaid, and then one out of some leftovers from the base of a card. And then instead of using the sending loads of Christmas cheer, I just trimmed off sending so that it just says loads of Christmas cheer. So it's a little more scrapbooky instead of more for cards. So then I journaled on a Word document and cut that out as a 3 by 4 on vellum. I just typed on the top so the journaling is lightly embedded over the top of the grove of trees, popped up the truck and added the gifts to that. Over on the envelope circle that I made with the crimped Spotlight on Nature die, I added the tree and the gifts and the sentiment. I was considering snipping off the very end of that sentiment. There's room to snip it off. So instead of saying joyful Christmas wishes, I could just say joyful Christmas. But I decided that I liked wishes. It didn't bother me, and that didn't feel to me as much like a sentiment as the others. So then I added a couple little trees at the top of the photos and the gifts. I'm kind of thinking about the puppy. I added the one puppy to the vintage truck on the right, and then I do decide to have another puppy peeking through the presents. Of course, down below in the Christmas tree yard, I added the Christmas tree to that truck and the gifts to that truck. And I've pulled out some earthy matte dots because these actually have cherry cobbler dots and black dots. They even have, I don't think it's actually Pool Party. It's looks a little bit more like maybe Lost Lagoon. I'm not sure. So I'm just putting a couple combinations of dots in some strategic places, and I am getting happy. I love that we were able to use these adorable vintage trucks on a scrapbook layout, and we're able to document some Christmas memories, some Christmas decorations. We have a couple original cards, and we have two slightly tiny elevated cards with a couple little change-ups plus a 2-page layout. Now, we actually have parts and pieces left over, so we might be able to eke out even another card, maybe get 5 cards and a 2-page layout. So I call that success. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you have, I hope you'll give me a thumbs up, hit like, subscribe, the notifications bell, and shoot me a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you're a kit person, do you love our kits? Do you like them just as they are, or do you like to change them up and elevate them? I hope you'll come back soon for more tips and tricks right here on Snips by Kelly. Bye-bye.